Kilo Island Board of Zoning Appeals. I'm Frank Cassidy, the board chair, and the board members who will hear your case today are myself, Frank Cassidy, and Lynn O'Leary to my left, and participating via Zoom, Jay Lewis, Ben Farabee, and Phil Adams. We don't normally conduct meetings virtually, but we had quorum problems in 4 cases this month, so we didn't want to delay or inconvenience the applicants. Our staff members here today are John Taylor, our planning director, and Daniel Vincent, our new planner, and welcome, Vincent, Daniel. And our attorney for the BZA is Joe Wilson. Our case rulings from this and any BZA meeting are available for public review and inspection during normal business hours at the town hall. Since we're conducting this meeting virtually, it's important that we obtain a clean and clear record so we don't speak over one another. So if you'd like to speak, please do so by raising your hand, and I'll acknowledge you and ask that you come to the podium. For the 3 of you on Zoom there, just, I won't be able to see you raising your hands, so just say something when you want to speak or ask a question. I'd like to ask the members of the public who are present today if you're familiar with the procedural workings of the BZA. If everyone is pretty familiar with the workings, I'll skip the comprehensive explanation of the BZA. Is it okay if I skip that comprehensive explanation? Seeing a lot of nodding heads, I'll do that. Because today's hearing is a public fact-finding meeting, we're in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act and SC Code 6-29-70. Because this is a quasi-judicial body, everything said in this meeting must be complete, true, and accurate. All of the information provided to the BZA is considered evidence, and this board may certify contempt of circuit court if false statements are made, either in writing or orally. Staff has placed a sign-up sheet outside for any person wishing to address the board, and we'll call on individuals as we go along. Please speak into the mic so that the record is clear and accurate, and also be reminded that all persons who wish to speak shall direct their comments to the board, not the applicant, other speakers, or parties of interest. Because of this, each person who wishes to speak today needs to be sworn in. In order to expedite that procedure, if you want to speak, I'd ask everyone who's going to speak on any of the cases to please stand, and Joe will administer the oath.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, thank you, everybody. I will now call the first case, which is BZA 23-000004 at 4 Nicholas Lane. Staff will present facts pertinent to the case. I shall then call the applicant to address the case. The applicant will stand at the podium, please, and state your name and current address for the record before presenting testimony. I'll then ask if anyone is going to speak either in support of the case or against the case to identify themselves and come to the podium, and you'll be limited to 3 minutes. The applicant will have an opportunity for rebuttal after that, if necessary. So with that, John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for your patience today in us getting situated here with our virtual members. Our first case that is before you is application BZA 23-000004. This is a variance request, and this is to increase the existing lot coverage to 36.8% for the installation of a proposed generator stand. That is above the maximum requirements for this particular subject property, which is 4 Nicholas Lane. The TMS number for this lot is 264-1300164. The property owner is John Majoris and Deborah Majoris. and being represented by Andrew Thole. The lot size is approximately 20,000, just over 20,000 square feet. This is zoned in our R1 zoning district, where the lot coverage, the setbacks are 15-foot front setback and a 5-foot setback along the, 10-foot setback along the front side, and then a 30-foot on the side yard setback, and then a 30-foot in the rear yard setback. The maximum lot coverage for this lot is 33%, and based on the subject property, the existing property is legally non-conforming with respects to those lot coverage. Here's an aerial map, zoning map of the subject property. It's zone R1 as stated. To the west, properties are zone R2. To the east and to the north, properties are zone R1. Subject property to the south, adjacent is a golf course, which is zone Parks and Recreation. As stated, here's an area of the subject property. You can see the golf course to the south and the existing structures, existing residents to the east and to the north. Moving in, you'll also notice that there is an adjacent bike path that separates the two, the property to the north and the subject property. Staff took a site visit and captured a few site images. You'll see the subject property here. The area question is for the proposed generator stand, which has been shown here in the staked out orange area. This is looking to the adjacent property just beyond the existing bike path to the north. And this is at the rear of the property. The subject property, here is the highlighted area in red is the proposed subject matter at hand, which is the approximate location of the generator stand, and the request of approximately 66 square feet. This subject property is under purview of the Architectural Review Board, and they have submitted to the Architectural Review Board. And the Architectural Review Board has stated that the proposed variance request to accommodate the stand expansion is approved. An as-built survey will be needed at the end of construction to confirm that the lot coverage does not exceed the approved permit and ensure that the lattice should match the existing alternate design if desired. It should be submitted for ARB review prior to install. And then the generator stand should be screened from view with native evergreen landscaping. If existing screening is not adequate, supplemental plantings may be needed. Any exposed piping should be painted to match the adjacent material. Staff did do a site visit, and based on the approval criteria for this particular subject case, there are as follows. Regarding criteria A, regarding extraordinary and exceptional conditions, there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to this property, and that's due to the legally non-conforming status of the subject property and the existing shared multi-use path on the subject property. The existing structure was established in 1997. That's according to Charleston County records. It is legally non-conforming as stated with regards to lot coverage. Within the applicant's letter of intent, they have stated, quote, "For Nicholas Lane is a low-lying property and the garage slab has an elevation of roughly 8 feet. When the home was initially constructed, a generator room was built on the ground level and a generator installed. This room is now located below flood elevation. The replacement generator can no longer be installed in the garage on the ground floor due to current FEMA regulations, flood regulations. And the replacement generator must be installed outside of the home on an elevated stand. The new stand location determined to be most suitable is on the north side of the home near the existing AC stand, and this is also location of the electrical meter, which provides ease of installation when tying the electrical components of the generator to the home's power supply," end quote. In regards to criteria B, these conditions may be unique to the subject property, and they may not generally apply to others in the vicinity. subject property is zone R1. There are additional areas that are zone R2 in Parks and Recreation. In the applicant's letter of intent, they did state very few homes on Kiowa were constructed with generators beneath the home, and most of the existing generators on Kiowa are installed designated exterior as stands. Some fall within the setbacks and lot coverage requirements, but others also require variances. Additionally, the majority of new construction projects on Kiowa are designed to accommodate future generator installations with lot coverage in mind. The third criteria, C, which speaks to the conditions applicable to this particular piece of property, making it unreasonable for the utilization. Based on staff's findings, the application of this ordinance to 4 Nicholas Lane, it would prohibit the ability to add this generator stand as proposed without eliminating lot coverage elsewhere under the current maximum allowable coverage. The ordinance does grant maximum lot coverage of 33%, and the existing coverage today is 36.5, which is approximately being proposed of 0.3% over that based on the 66 square feet proposed in the applicant's plans. The applicant has stated in their materials that the aging and undersized generator installed below flood elevation is the condition necessitating this variance. Criteria D, which speaks to substantial detriment of the adjacent property or the public good. The authorization of this variance, it may not be of substantial detriment based on staff's findings. The proposed plans do increase the total lot coverage from approximately 36.5% to 36.8%, but the proposed plans are more than the previously grandfathered 36.5 lot coverage, and it's positioned within the required buildable setback areas with complete view away from the adjacent property owners. As stated before, there is an existing bike path between the adjacent property and the subject property, and the applicant has stated in their materials that the stand will be somewhat visible from the bike path located between 4 and 3 Nicholas to the neighbors of 3 Nicholas. However, since the existing AC stand is also located in this area, the generator stand will look identical in style and will only extend further north. The applicant has also stated that the ARB has informed us that additional plantings around the stand could be required upon completion of the project, and if additional plantings around the stand would help aid the BZA in approving the variance request, we would happily include them in our initial scope of work with the approval of the ARB. Additionally, the applicant have stated that we will be installing a water-cooled Cummins generator. These generators run at a noise level similar to a modern vehicle. No noise level will be noticed by 3 Nicholas, which most likely can already sense the current generator while it is operating despite being enclosed. Looking at criteria E, this is establishment of a variance that would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted. This is a permitted use within the zoning district. So based on staff's findings, the granting of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, extend the physically non-conforming use of land, or change the zoning district boundaries. Should the BZA approve the variance request, the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted, and that's outlined within the applicant's letter of intent. Based on criteria F, the BZA may not consider profitability when considering this application. The applicant has stated in their materials that their sole purpose is installing a new generator that is up to date and modernized with the current equipment, with a more efficient and quieter unit, and they have no current or future intention to rent the property. Criteria G, the need for the variance may be the result of the applicant's own actions. The existing structure is legally non-conforming with regard to the lot coverage, and per the applicant's letter of intent, the original architect, builder, and owner chose to build a generator underneath the home. Though this may have been standard practice at the time, it no longer is, and the current generator has met, if not exceeded, its expected useful lifespan. Criteria H, this is not contrary to the public or neighborhood interests. Based on staff's finding, it may not adversely affect other property in the vicinity nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, and intent of and in purposes of this regulation. As stated before, the Architectural Review Board did grant approval for the proposed plans, stating the proposed variance request to accommodate the stand expansion is approved. And the applicant has stated in their materials that we believe that this should the board grant the variance, the project will be in harmony with the neighborhood and will not interfere or affect other property in the vicinity. And as mentioned above, the new stand will blend into the existing structure, and the new generator stand operates at a low noise level compared to standard air-cooled generators. The final criteria I, which speaks to substantially conflicting with the comprehensive plan and the ordinance. Based on staff's findings, this may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of the ordinance. And the applicant has stated in their materials that we believe that should the board grant the variance, this will not conflict with the comprehensive plan or the purposes of the ordinance. And additionally, we understand that the properties have been granted similar variances on Kiowa. Based on all of those criteria as outlined, staff did provide you with one additional consideration that's not listed here in the slide. But in the event that the board does decide to approve this application, based on your ability to approve with conditions, or deny, the generator stand should be screened from the view with native evergreen landscaping. And upon installation, the applicant shall schedule a site inspection with the planning department to determine if additional screening is required to screen any of the exposed element. And this is based off the same outline sort of criteria presented by the Architectural Review Board.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John before we hear from the applicant? I had just one, John. At a prior meeting, we talked about an expedited process for these generator cases when it deals with setback violations. Does it make sense in these cases where it's total lot coverage that we handle them case by case?
At the time when we revised the sort of expedited or staff administrative review relief for setback of generators being proposed, the idea or the thinking at that time was that that would be something administratively approved because it would only affect one ordinance change, or it would only be asking relief from one ordinance impact, and that would be the setbacks. In this case, you would be now introducing two components of the ordinance where a proposed plan would conflict. And so that work group did not suggest adding in an additional language to allow lot coverage to be, but that's something we can take back to the Planning Commission and for them to further to study to see if lot coverage, if there's a certain amount of lot coverage that would be willing to be granted administratively over the existing.
Up to you. Okay, any other questions for John?
Frank, I have
Hear
one.
from
This
the
is Jay.
applicant now? Oh, I'm sorry.
John, is this, the need for this variance or the additional variance is because it's now moving outside the house onto a stand because of the sea level change? Is that what I heard?
So that's based on the applicant's letter of intent that the current, and maybe I'll let the applicants actually speak to that and answer that question. I'll let the applicants answer that question.
Who's speaking for the?
Yeah. You come up with it.
And state your name and your business address, please.
My name is Andrew Thole. My business is At Home Charleston, and it is located at 638 North Shore Drive in Charleston, 29412. I'm here on behalf of John and Deborah Majors today. Unfortunately, John had to make some unexpected travel plans and cannot be with us today, although he did have every intention to do so. As John stated, and not to be reiterating too much, the existing generator was installed at the original construction of 4 Nicholas Lane. It is installed in a room, a dedicated generator room underneath the house. It draws air from outside and exhausts outside the building, very close to where the stand, actually identically the same location where the stand is proposed. The new generation, or I'm sorry, to answer this gentleman's question, I can't remember your name. The new generator has to be installed outside due to the fact that the FEMA flood elevation is higher than when this house was constructed originally. The ground floor elevation of the home is roughly 8 feet, the garage slab. The ceiling height in there is less than 8 feet, so we do not have much height or any headroom to even install the generator underneath the house. It's hence why we proposed this 6x11 stand outside of the building. And then, as John said, this location seemed most appropriate given the fact that there's an existing equipment stand for the HVAC units. We figured we would extend off of it using the same lattice work and to screen it per ARB and BZA requirements with greenery. Once installed, the unit is, as John said, it's a liquid-cooled generator, uses a radiator instead of fans to cool the motor. It runs relatively quiet, especially at low load levels. Besides that, that's the extent of what we have planned for this project. John would be, of course, very appreciative. He does plan to live here full-time. His wife just retired, and John is going to finish his career here in Charleston in the next couple years. That's the extent of our proposal. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thal.
Welcome.
Jay, did you get your question answered?
Yes, I guess my initial reaction was usually the next generation of technology takes up a smaller footprint, but I understand you have to move it off of the low ground to an elevation because of the sea level, so I get it.
That is correct, and the unit is actually going to be a little bit larger. The original unit is a Volvo sailboat engine, so it's quite small, and it turns a Cummins-specific alternator. So the combination of those two is small, but that unit is only capable of running refrigerator units within the house. John would prefer to have the entire house fully functional in the event of a power outage, so that way he can continue to work full-time at the house.
Any other questions?
Yes, this is Ben Farabee. I have a question. The noise level, the question had to do with the noise level of this particular unit and whether or not Kiowa has noise level restrictions, and if they do, does this meet those levels?
Mr. Fair, I won't be able to comment to whether or not this particular proposal meets our noise ordinance requirements, but essentially the applicant would need to meet those requirements. We do have standards regarding noise, which I think generators in general are exempt from the overall noise requirements, as you would think, based on decibel levels. Is there a follow-up question to that?
Mr. Thal, can you state that this generator meets our noise requirements?
I am not aware of the specific requirements, nor am I aware of the exact decibel levels. However, I have installed this specific unit at other properties within Kiowa city limits, or town limits.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain any motions any of the board members would care to make.
I'll make a motion to pass the variance for the generator stand.
Lynn has moved to approve this this application. Lynn, can I ask if you'd add this staff requirement that's at the end of our notes here,
Yes.
which is about, okay. So that's the approve with the requirements on
And the screening and the
landscaping and so
landscaping
forth.
and the sound.
Is there a
This is Jay,
second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jay.
Any further discussion? Let me, just because this is a little awkward, I'll just call the roll. Phil,
Yes, in favor.
Lynn,
Yes.
Ben? Ben?
Unmute Ben.
Yes,
Jay?
did you hear me?
Yes, in favor.
And Frank, yes. So the motion is passed unanimously. Thanks to everyone, and I think we approve this because it's a reasonable accommodation given the new siting requirements for generators.
Andrew, on a side note, can you let John know that his pool gate on the pool side of the house is broken, and so it is open?
Okay, well, thank you very
Just
much. Yeah,
for safety factors?
we'll get that taken care of as well. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Thule. I'll now call case BZA 23-000006 at 201 Glen Abbey. John, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our second case for this afternoon, as stated, case number BZA 23-000006. The applicant, property owner, Stephen Hatter and Susan Hatter, are being represented by Kevin Wally and Tim. I'm going to mispronounce Tim's name. One more time, Kevin. Hilkhauser. Thank you. The property location is 201 Glen Abbey, and this particular request is for the reduction of the required setbacks, particularly the rear setback in the proposal of 1,327 square feet encroachment, and for a proposed deck modification, screen porch, and pool addition. Property is zone R1 residential and is approximately 18,417 square feet in size. TMS number 264-1400112. As stated, this is in the R1 zoning district. Those setbacks as listed, 25 feet up front, 15 on the sides, and 30 in the rear. And the proposal, as stated, is encroaching into the rear setback. Here is a zoning map outlining the subject property in red. The subject property to the east and to the west and across Glen Abbey to the north are all zone R1 residential as well. To the south is Parks and Recreation zoning district. Here you can see the area of the site. The house is subject, pushed further back towards the existing lagoon of the subject property, or adjacent to the subject property. Staff did conduct a site visit to show you the few images of on site. Front entrance. Towards the property rear. It's also looking to the rear of the property. And this is across Glen Abbey. Adjacent property as well. There's a lot of mature vegetation on site. The outline plans as shown. The existing structure was constructed in 1987 based on Charleston County records. And the applicant's proposed plans include proposing a deck modification and a screen porch and pool addition. The existing lot coverage is 32.06%, and the existing encroachment of the rear setback is approximately 1,376 square feet. As shown, the existing structure does have a current encroachment. So the image to the left you see is the existing site plan in the area of deck. The setback goes through a portion of either the home or the deck. In the proposed site plan, that same encroachment remains. It's just that the deck, the screen porch is over to the left of plan view, in the pool just center of plan view, and the deck modifications plan right. The applicant has submitted to the Kiawah Island Architecture Review Board, and based on the Architecture Review Board's review, they have approved the variance request for the pool deck and screen porch. Based on the approval criteria, staff findings are as follows. Based on criteria A, there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions due to the mature trees and the vegetation on site and the placement siting of the home, which is further away from the front right away. Per the applicant's letter of intent, that the specimen-sized natural trees retained in the front of the lot present a natural buffer to the street and allow the home to be secluded visually from the street. This adds greatly to the streetscape and community ambiance. In the rear of the property, the current improvements are at approximately 30 feet from the lagoon edge, so it does appear that the original location was planned in harmony with the existing trees and natural vegetation when the home was originally built, 1985, 1986. Criteria B, the conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. This is located in the R1 zoning district. Adjacent properties are also located in the R1 residential zoning district. As noted to the south, the rear of the property that is located in the Parks and Recreation zoning district where the lagoon exists at the rear, and the existing structures in the vicinity may or may not have similar setback encroachments. The applicant has stated in their materials that we are not aware of any similar non-conforming lot condition in the immediate area. Each individual property has special attributes in shape, size, and orientation, and the specific natural trees in the lagoon which exist have compelled the current location of the home to be placed irrespective of the general recommended rear setbacks. Criteria C, in application to this subject property of 201 Glen Abbey, this would prohibit the construction of the proposed modification, screen porch, and pool addition. However, it does not unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Based on the applicant's letter of intent, an unnecessary hardship is present when the general rear 30-foot setback is applied to the home today. That home is not of an unusual size, and in fact, it's well below the allowable lot coverage of 33% as the home exists. And with the 30-foot rear setback applied, the existing home has a non-conforming area of 1,376 square feet. The planned addition, when completed, will reduce the non-conforming encroachments by 49 square feet and allow the home to be well within the 33% allowable lot coverage. Criteria D, this speaks to substantial detriment of the adjacent property or the public good. The authorization of this variance may not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties or the public good. The proposed structure encroaches less than the improved encroachment into the rear setback. When evaluating the distances from the rear of the property, the existing stairs, the furthest extent of that structure is approximately 1 foot 4 inches away from the rear property line and approximately 25 feet away from the lagoon edge. Within the proposed plans, the furthest extent of where the pool is located is approximately 5 feet 8 inches and 29 feet 5 inches away from the lagoon edge. The encroachment the encroachment into the rear setback is reduced by approximately 49 square feet, and that's less than the existing encroachment today. And per the applicant's letter of intent, the residential character of the property is very secluded from the adjacent neighbors to the west and east sides. and visibility is well screened by existing natural vegetation and current orientation of the neighboring homes. The southern property to the rear is also well screened by a flag-type lot, which will not have a home built immediately across from the lagoon. This is currently setting with allow for extensive screening from the neighbors. In addition, the planned addition reduces the non-conforming encroachment and moves the existing components of the home and removes the existing paving well forward from their current locations. And the visual impact will be improved by the planned addition. If you look at criteria E, the granting of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted. The applicant has stated in their materials that the granting of the variance will not allow for the use not permitted, the boundaries of the zoning map, and will not add to the non-conforming physical size of the encroachment. The size of the encroachment is actually being reduced by these proposed plans. And criteria F, the BZA may not consider profitability when considering this request, and the applicant has stated in their materials the property will be able to use to the extent permitted by the lot coverage size within the ordinance. Criteria G, this speaks to the need for the variance being the applicant's own actions. Based on staff review, the need for the variance may be the result of the applicant's own actions, just with respect to the legally non-conforming status of the existing structure. And per the applicant's letter of intent, they have stated that the owners purchased the property in its current form and had no prior involvement in the existing non-conforming encroachments now in place. Criteria H, the granting of the variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, and it may not adversely affect other property in the vicinity. The encroachment of the existing footprint is reduced with the applicant's proposed plans, and the applicant has stated within their letter of intent, this will enhance the improvement of the community aesthetic and allow for others to upgrade, maintain their property over time, as is possible with adjacent properties that do not experience this particular hardship. And the final criteria I, which speaks to the comprehensive plan and purposes of our ordinance. Based on staff review, this may not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan or purposes of the ordinance. The applicant has outlined within their materials, again, granting the variance and relaxing the setback at the rear of the lot does not conflict with the comprehensive plan in this unique application. The distance to the lagoon edge, which is now the apparent visual rear property line, remains at 30+ feet in distance. After the addition is completed, the setback will be increased slightly in some areas, and the existing raised stair and ground level paving encroachment so close to the lagoon and actually over the rear property line will be removed. That is the staff's criteria. I do want to highlight that you have received as part of your materials public comments regarding this particular application, 2 letters of record. 3 letters of record. One from the homeowner at 119 Spartina Court, 208 Glen Abbey, as well as 203 Glen Abbey.
Questions for John? Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant.
I'll refer. My name is Kevin Wally. I'm an architect, and with me today is Susan and Steve Hayter, along with their contractor Kurt Watts. I'd like to open this with thanking John and his team for putting together the presentation with us. I would like to note clearly that the existing home sits on Glen Abbey, well behind numerous oak trees on the front. And having practiced out here, fortunately, on Kiowa for about 34 years, it appears to me that so many trees were saved in the development of this home. And we put together a landscape design with 3 oaks and presented the improvements that were proposed, where we're actually, the existing home. There's another drawing here, right? Go back. This, can you all see this exhibit?
Yes.
The existing home to the left has a land disturbance of about 32% on site. There is a deck that extends out from the home. There is a staircase, also semi-elevated, that extends out. And then there is a fire pit and brick paving that ties back into the driveway. You hopefully can note through the red delineation that the application of the setbacks that came about with the development agreement in, I believe, 1998 timeframe, about 10 years after this house was developed, runs through the back quarter of this house. And when we presented to the Architectural Review Board, they asked us to calculate all these square footages. So what we have in place is about 1,379 square feet of the house and the deck and the stairs and the brick patio that are beyond this applied setback. Our proposal before you today is to remove all the non-conforming areas that extend beyond the property line, take away the staircase, and if you look at these 2 drawings, you'll see that we're actually going to honor the 30-foot setback on the left side with the proposed screen porch addition, and we're actually going to increase the setback on the right-hand side to about 37'11". We are going to add about 6 to 7% more of lot coverage, but we are still well within the 33% allowable. And it's our belief that we're within the spirit of the original development agreement in terms of lot coverage, lot size. The house is not a huge property. It's not overwhelming. Because of the orientation of the property to the south, there's a lot of natural, not only the lagoon, but a lot of natural land that you may have seen in some of those pictures. I do want to address a couple of the comments that came in where I think that Kiowa is great because we have great neighbors, but I think that there was a misinterpretation of our request. We're actually reducing the encroachment about 49 square feet. We're increasing the distance from the right-hand side of the lagoon, and I think the overall impact of this is going to be a terrific improvement to a dated home. I'm not aware of many of these types of situations where the house has been placed independent of setbacks, but clearly the lagoon, like we do with the marsh, we're trying to step back about 30 feet, and I think that we've honored that. So we'd like to request the board to consider these unique existing conditions and grant us this variance where we'll remove some of the encroachment and leave it an improved property. Thank you. I'll answer any questions.
Thank you,
if
Mr.
have.
Woolley. Just to be super clear, I think these, the comments by Ms. Gallagher and Mr. Gardner kind of assumed that you were asking for a variance of 1,327
Yes.
square feet, and that's not the case.
Yes, yes, sir. That was, as I looked at it and read their comments, I mean, Mr. Gallagher made the profound comment that if he misread it, as many others might, never mind. And I think what happened was, as I saw it with Susan, and we were a little taken back, we think that what we have here now is a non-conforming situation, not unique to Kiowa, but we think we're going to improve it, and we think we're going to reduce it. And you know, we'd certainly like to update the house. We'd certainly like to modify the structure so it's more usable. They're going to be living in it full-time now. And we think it's a request that you can approve without, you know, creating a standard as the other client, as the other property owner mentioned.
This is Ben Farabee. I have a question.
Go ahead, Ben.
Kevin, with regard to the two particular complaints, have you reached out to these people to discuss the project with them and try to alleviate their concerns?
No, I didn't, sir. The first thing I did look at was the location of one of the property owners on Spartina. They're not even within the purview of this property. And unfortunately, I just really became aware of it today. But we certainly can, you know, reach out to them and facilitate their fears that we're not trying to have a precedent set to go way over setbacks. And then as far as Mr. Gallagher goes.
I think that would be wise on your part, and also I think would assist in whatever determination is made here today. When I first read the proposal, I think my initial reaction was much like theirs, that it appeared that you were going to be adding 1,300 to the space, and further reading, of course, that's not the case. And as you outlined, it is that you reduced the coverage, and so I think there probably is a misunderstanding. It'd be wise to go back and mend neighbor fences.
I'm personally happy to do that. When we went through the architectural review board, that was when their board actually saw that the setback cut through the house, and at that point, you know, they asked us what's the square footage of encroachment. And so it was a little bit larger than we had first realized, because they had just had the property resurveyed. And we thought that the setback was 30 feet from the lagoon. We thought it had either had special dispensation or something had happened that way. But, you know, there's nothing on record giving us permission to do that. So this is really a formal way for us to get this, you know, put together properly and recorded. But we can reach out to both of those clients. The other one is on Glen Abbey, and I'm sure Michael Gardner would welcome it.
Thank you, Mr. Wally. Other questions, comments? Seeing none, I did entertain any motions anyone wishes to make. I'm sorry?
Open it for comments.
Oh, yeah. Anyone
Yeah, was anybody,
have any comments? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, was the motion made?
Not yet.
Not yet. We forgot to open it up to comments.
Okay, all right,
Sorry,
thank
Dan.
you.
Tom Emanuel, Architectural Review Board Director. Just wanted to just say that, you know, not to go over all the details that John and also Kevin has outlaid, as well as they have, but, you know, given the unique site conditions and that the home was pushed back and there's a substantial amount of screening, you know, on both sides of the property as well to the other side, the board felt like, you know, there was little to no negative aesthetic impacts to neighbors in this case, and that was one of the main reasons why the board approved this, which is actually, pointing out, is a reduction of the encroachments on the property.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Okay, now I'd call for any motions that anyone would care to make.
Frank, just a question. Are the people who wrote the letters, are they not present today?
I don't think so. Ms. Gallagher or Mr. Gardner, are you here today? No, apparently not.
I know you guys are all remote, so it was hard to see the property, but we had walked it. And when you actually take the time to walk in and see what they were talking about, it made more sense. When I first read it, I thought the same thing that the two people who had opposed it. I was like, wow, that is a really big request. But then when I walked the property, I realized what it was that the homeowners were asking for and what their architects had worked with them on. So
would you care to move it?
yes, I will make a motion to go ahead and pass the variance, and providing that they follow all of the screening rules and all the other requirements before that.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can I amend the motion before the second or not?
Sure. If it's okay with Lynn, it's okay with me. Go ahead.
Pardon me?
Go for it.
Oh, and maybe this is an inappropriate request, but I would like to include that the homeowners or the architect have this meeting with these two residents just to alleviate their concerns.
Okay.
Is making it part of the motion.
I don't think that needs to be part of it. It's gonna-
Is it appropriate to make that motion or not? I mean, add that to it or not?
Well, if you're okay with it, otherwise.
I don't think it needs to be part of the motion, but that's just my opinion. I mean, I think the architect has spoken that he is going to go ahead and speak with them, and I'd assume the haters would do the same.
Yeah, okay, but I don't have that same feeling. I was just, I was a little taken back the fact that he dismissed their concerns without touching base with them, which appears to be an obvious oversight on their part. So they're sitting there thinking, this is really bad, and we ignored it, or he ignored it. I'm just concerned about whether that'll take place or not.
Okay, here's how you're going to make, the original motion is on the floor.
So is there a
So
second?
is there a second for that original motion?
I second the original motion without the amendment.
Okay. Now, would you like to make an amendment, make a motion for an amendment requiring the owners or the architects to reach out to the commenters?
Yes, I would. So move to the amendment.
Okay.
That the architect or the owners would reach out to explain the end result of the outline.
Is there a second for that?
Okay. So the motion to amend dies.
Okay.
So we'll,
And then we move on.
On with the original motion.
Okay, so we move on the original motion.
all right. Is there Phil?
Yeah, Frank, I mean, just to the sort of proposed amendment to the motion, I mean, I agree that prudence and sort of neighborly behavior would strongly suggest that the homeowner or his representative try to address the neighbors because, like others here apparently, when I read the thing and then looked at the at the drawings, I saw two different things. So the written description maybe was less clear than I needed it to be anyway. But at the same time, I don't think we ought to sort of, in effect, interpose ourselves in the sort of inter-neighbor discussions, given that, assuming that we make the determination that the proposal is acceptable.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
John, the Spartina home that made a comment, I'm assuming they did not get a letter in regards to this variance, because literally Glen Abbey is here and Spartina is way over here. I mean, I wouldn't think that's anywhere near the lines of.
So I'm hesitant to speak on record. We did increase our radius from 300 to 500 feet. I just don't know if that is within that radius. It's not. Okay, so,
It is way,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
it's
because
not-
Spartina is out by me, right by the preserve, and Susan
Okay.
and Stephen are way off of Flyaway. So that's somebody secondhand that somebody could have said. And I'm not saying that negatively, I'm just saying that it's great to have a comment on that and, you know, in reference to a slippery slope, but at the end of the day, is that part of this hearing? That's my question there. I understand a next door neighbor could have a concern, but if they don't understand the purview of the work they were going to do, that's an easy conversation to have.
so I'll answer, just to clarify for the record too, it's not within that radius, number
Okay.
one. Number two, the board is allowed to take any public comments of record
Okay.
as part of their evaluation
Okay.
consideration. So.
All right, my sense is that we think it would be a nice idea if you reach out to those folks, and I'm seeing people nodding, but it's not part of our motion. Any further comments? All right, I'll call the roll. Phil?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Before we get into the next case, why don't we take 5 minutes until 2 o'clock, and we'll start at 2 o'clock. Following cases are at 159 Seamarsh, and the first one we're going to take up is BZA 23-000008. And John, you're up.
This is Ben Farabee. I have a question, maybe of John before you get started.
Sure, go ahead, Ben.
John, I see you're starting with 8 and rather than 7, and my question has to do with that in terms of why are we doing 2 cases instead of just 1? And does the decision of 1 impact the second case? In other words, if we reject the first case, that we 8, for example, if we're looking at, what impact does it has on 7? And also if we accept it? Can you explain that before we get started?
So that's precisely why we are hearing case number 8 before case number 7. If the whatever the decision is made out of case number 8, it would impact case 7. Case number 8 is a special exception request, and case number 7 is the variance. And so essentially, you would be approving the use first, or considering the use, and then looking at the impacts of that use being placed.
Thank you.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our case before you right now is case number BZA 23-000008. The subject property is 159 Seamarsh Drive, TMS number 207-03-00027. This subject property is zoned within our R2 residential overlay zoning district. The property owners, Stephen Toole and Kimberly Vini, are represented by Mr. Randolph Rice. The lot size is approximately 8,627 square feet. And this is a particular special exception for the placement of a detached accessory structure, and particularly on a lot less than 15,000 square feet in size. The applicant subject property is located adjacent to a golf course to the west side, and the adjacent properties to the south and the north are also located in that same zoning R2O overlay zoning district. Properties to the east is a lagoon with a landscape buffer in the front, and that's across Seamarsh. Subject property does have side setbacks of 7 feet on the right and 3 feet with a wall on the left, and 30 feet at the rear, 20 up front along Seamarsh Drive. And the maximum lot coverage is 50%. The ordinance does define accessory structure as a use as part of structure, customary, incidental, or subordinate to the principal use of a zoning lot or structure. And in this case, accessory uses is located on the same zoning as a principal use, except where cases of off-street parking and temporary construction facilities. The ordinance does state in section 12-104 that no accessory building may be constructed on a lot less than 15,000 square feet, and detached accessory buildings shall be prohibited from being placed in the front of the principal building, shall be placed in the rear yard, except that a detached accessory use may be constructed in the front of a principal residence, where that residence backs up to a beach, golf course, lagoon, or marsh, and is only permitted after approval as this special exception. The accessory buildings will be located within the buildable area of the lot as delineated by the setback requirements. So that's the reason for the particular request today. As shown, this is the zoning map, the R2O overlay zoning district. The subject property site, staff did conduct a site visit to show you the areas here. This is the front entrance adjacent to Seamarsh Drive, existing parking. This is also a subject property showing a substantial oak tree at the entrance. The image to the right is a little rear of the home, The image on the left is just in between the property, I believe, to the north. This is subject property at the rear. And looking across Sea Marsh Drive as reference to the east, where the lagoon exists. So here is the existing site plan, which shows the highlighted existing building footprint, as long as the area of existing parking over to Plan North, the northeast corner here shown. That area is proposed to be removed, and the proposed site plan as shown, a one-story garage is being proposed on that same area as the existing parking, where the driveway would now be shifted further south. The apron of that driveway shifted further south, planned south here, adjacent to Sea Marsh Drive. The applicant has included in their materials a proposed landscape plan, as well as drawings showing the proposed garage addition. So here is that garage addition. The applicant has also provided elevations. And I'll let the applicant actually speak to the specific sizing and architectural elements of the proposed design. So regarding the special exception, these are different criteria than the variance criteria. However, the applicant will still need to meet all outline criteria as it pertains to this particular section of the ordinance. And so the first criteria that's outlined, to propose use at the specified location is consistent with the vision and goals of the comprehensive plan. Based on staff's findings, the placement of the proposed detached accessory structure, in this case the garage, in front of the principal building, that may be consistent with the vision and goals embodied within the comprehensive plan. And staff has outlined sections of the comprehensive plan which states the purpose of the R2 zoning district is to promote stable residential consisting of medium density residences that are surrounded by parks, golf courses, and open spaces. This category is intended to provide and promote medium-density development of single-family detached and attached residential areas. In the designation, the maximum density must not include 6 dwelling units per acre. The district can accommodate the development of patio homes and zero lot line homes, which would not be found in the low-density residential district. A typical area of the medium-density residential designation will be Inlet Cove or Night Heron cottages. Also within our comprehensive plan, the housing goal element, goal 1 of the housing element, 8, which states encourage development of diversity of housing stock types and styles that meet different needs of the population. And implementation strategy, A, states provide mechanisms to permit flexibility and innovation in residential project design to promote land use efficiency and environmental protection. The proposed detached accessory building is to be sited on the current there's not a vacant, there's a typo there, in the front east portion of the principal structure, which backs up to the golf course. And per the applicant's letter of intent, that clearing and overriding the fixing of the prominent homes parking situation would warrant this special exception. The public nature of the current parking in an ungainly manner would be transformed to the public good if this special exception and subsequent variance is approved. Looking at criteria B, staff has outlined with regards to the general purpose and intent of these zoning regulations, that the purpose and intent based on our zoning code states to promote a stable residential area consisting of medium-density residences that are surrounded by parks, golf courses, and open spaces. Additionally, stating that detached accessory buildings shall be prohibited from being placed in the front of the principal building and shall be placed in the rear yard, except that a detached accessory use may be constructed in the front of the principal residence where that residence backs up to a beach, golf course, lagoon, or marsh, And in this case, the property does back up to a golf course, and so that would require special exception approval. The proposed use may be consistent with the purposes of our zoning code, particularly the R2 overlay zoning district section. And per the applicant's letter of intent, the use of the enclosed garage is within the zoning regulations. Therefore, this request may be consistent with the general intent of the ordinance, and in order to allow for a varied layout pattern for this property due to its location and shape. Looking at criteria C, this speaks about the compatibility and the preservation of character and integrity to the adjacent development. The request may be compatible with and preserve the integrity of adjacent development and neighborhoods. The properties within the vicinity with the garage have garages that are detached or attached. The proposed accessory structure is to be situated on the current subject property, which is configured that has currently surface level parking. And that proposed structure does encroach over the required front setbacks, which would require a variance should the special exception be approved. And as the applicant has put it in their materials, the allowance for the front yard accessory structure is allowable for larger lots on the golf course. This lot with an 80-foot frontage would be likely having a rectangular of 80 by 190 lot with an accessory building. The idea of getting a garage would be better in concert with neighboring buildings. Looking at criteria D, based on the approval criteria, this may be compatible with the character of the R2O zoning district, and this is due to the orientation of the principal structure adjacent to the golf course. The ordinance does allow for flexibility through special exception for detached accessory buildings, which back up to beach, marsh, golf course, or lagoons. And based on the applicant letter of intent, they have stated that the use is compatible with the character. Looking at criteria E, the use will be developed in a way that preserves the natural features, including substantial oaks. And that's based on staff's findings looking at the provided landscape plan as part of the application. And similarly, the applicant has stated that yes, the use will be developed in a way that will preserve and incorporate natural features. Looking at criteria F, the subject property is within the existing neighborhood. This criteria speaks to the proposal not generating additional traffic or pedestrian vehicle traffic that becomes hazardous or in conflicts with the existing and anticipated development within the neighborhood. Staff finds that it would be within the existing neighborhood, so that it's not a newly generated additional impacts or hazardous impacts to the neighborhood. Criteria G, which speaks about the roadway adjustments, traffic control devices, or access restrictions to control traffic flow or divert traffic as may be needed to reduce or eliminate development generated traffic or neighborhood streets, on neighborhood streets. Staff has noted that the subject property is part of an existing neighborhood as well, and which that would address current traffic circulation within the development. And then criteria H, which speaks to minimizing the adverse impacts, including visual impacts of the proposed special use on the property, looking at adjacent properties. And based on staff's findings, the proposed plans to preserve 3 oaks in the front of the proposed structure and increase the plantings to buffer the proposed structure from the street, that would serve the purpose. Due to the encroachment within the front setback, the proposed accessory building may be readily visible from adjacent parcels to the north or south, and that would increase the visibility from the street. And that particularly is the front, which is Marsh Drive. Based on outline, the accessory building would be visible from adjacent lots 160 and 158 Marsh, and those are located to the north and south respectively. And these the preserved and additional proposed buffering, vegetation, and siding may provide sufficient buffering and screening from adjacent properties The applicant has stated that they would have included a new fence that would address minimizing adverse effects, particularly visual impacts on adjacent properties. Criteria I, which speaks to the use of all other requirements of the zoning regulations, as stated that this particular request is a special exception. However, what would also be needed is a variance should the proposed plans special exception be approved, and that is respect to the proposed plans does encroach over the front setback. An applicant has stated that they believe that their application does comply with all requirements of the zoning regulations. And looking at the final criteria, which speaks to just the materiality, the materiality of detrimentally, looking at the public health, safety, and convenience and welfare. Based on staff's finding, the proposed use may not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, convenience, and welfare because the accessory building has been oriented on site to minimize the visual impacts from the golf course, and particularly the additional landscaping provided in the landscape plan. And then the applicant has stated in their materials that the granting of the use would not be detrimental. Within this particular case, I've outlined as part of application received letters regarding this particular request. We did receive public comments from the property owners of 160 Marsh Hawk Lane and 158 C Marsh. If the board does consider approval of the special exception, staff has outlined one condition that is recommended, which is the applicant shall provide an as-built survey to the planning department to ensure consistency with the proposed plans regarding coverage and the placement of the proposed structure. That's all. Yes, sir.
Questions for John? John, I had one. This is the first case I've participated in where the ARB has not ruled prior to our getting the case. Is there some reason for that?
I believe the Architecture Review Board has approved it, but I would let Tommy speak to that specifically if that's a question on what their comments would be for this particular case.
Okay.
Are there any others before I allow him to come?
Any other questions?
You want to come? Yes, sir.
So in considering this request before the Architecture Review Board, the things that we looked at was the narrowness of the lot, also the shape of it as it narrows towards the back, and considering this garage forward of the building, and also the setback. Yeah, this is good. This is good. So we can see here in the landscape plan, which was also another consideration of ours, is that the applicant showing a substantial amount of screening and landscaping forward of the garage on the street to help buffer that. So that consideration, as well as the shape of the lot, the narrowness of it, and the preservation of significant trees on the lot were things that we looked at as being worthy of approval for this variance.
So you have approved it? at this
Yes, we
point?
have.
Okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't reflected in the documents. That was my only question.
Okay,
All right, thank
any
you.
other questions?
Are you Mr. Rudolph?
Mr. Rice, yes.
Mr. Rice, I'm sorry, Rice, yes. I'd ask, I'd specifically ask in your comments when you get to it that you specifically address the comments submitted by Ms. Abernathy and Ms. Nix.
Well, thank you all for hearing these cases today. My name is Randy Rice, and I'm with Rice Architecture Plus Interiors. We're at 4250 Hope Plantation Drive. Johns Island, South Carolina. And pleased to have the owner here, Steve Toole. And we'd love for you to hear our special exception case today is following with the variance regardless of this outcome today. That would be very helpful to our clients as we're prepared for both today, per some of our conversations with Mr. Taylor. At root of this is as the ARB representative stated, we just really are struggling with a difficult lot. We have 80 feet frontage in the front. So if you looked at the 80 by 190 square footage, you're looking at over 15,000 square feet. Wouldn't be here for this first special exception. So hence the need for special exceptions in the code is when we have lots like this. If we looked at the overall site plan for the neighborhood, you'll see lot after lot after lot that are more square, more rectilinear. And there's a few that are not. This happens to be the smallest of the non-square lots, if I'm not mistaken, in this vicinity. So this patio lot, we're trying to make some lemonade with a little bit of a lemon in terms of the site plan configuration we've been handed. So that's, in short, that's the hardship that we have. I could go through the list. John went through all those pretty clearly, and I think staff was in agreement with all of them. We are not affecting the north lot line in terms of what legally we can build to. So in short, our variance does not affect that specific property line condition. We're not going any further than 20 feet from the front yard setback there. So if we had a lot, say, I don't know if my little sketch is going to come through, but if we had a lot that was perpendicular or rectilinear, we could build to this corner, and the north lot would have no difference than, if we, they would be within our rights to build there. The fact that we've got this irregular shape is what's causing this need for this variance approach. Chairman, if you could ask me any specific questions from the neighbors. I don't have those in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay. Number one is we request that a survey be completed to ensure compliance on property line setbacks.
Yes, and I think that would be something that we would certainly be amenable to for approval of this.
Okay. We request that a hardscape percentage study, maybe you might explain what that means because I don't know, be conducted to safeguard the ecological balance of properties in our neighborhood.
Yep, and I think they're referring to the 50% maximum lot coverage consideration, and our survey would confirm that we did not go over that. So yeah, we have a garage, we have an accessory building, and as we develop this, we would use that survey to make sure that we're not over that 50% regulation, and that would not be approved at our stakeout for the building of the building.
Staff has suggested a condition that be shown when the as-built be shown when this is done. Another concern is possible increased flooding along Sea Marsh and Marsh Hawk due to removal of trees in favor of a large structure built in close proximity to the road and nearby pond.
Great, that's an excellent concern, which has also been an owner's concern. No trees, other than there's been three palm trees that are being taken out from right in the front of the yard, but none of the oak trees that are there are being taken out. We've gone through great care to try to take the site plan driveway pattern so that those don't get affected. So that's job number one in terms of the actual design criteria that we started with. And that in terms of roof runoff, we have a French drain in the program that's going to create a situation where any site drainage would remain on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any other questions for Mr. Rice? Yeah, Lynn?
I have two questions. How tall is the garage, the ancillary building, as in comparison to the home? Is it taller than the house, the same as the house? I couldn't quite tell by any of the... But it doesn't, it's not saying.
Yeah.
It's not saying
Okay.
how it compares to the home.
like
Understood.
it's
So
shorter
here's an
based on-
elevation that shares both the garage profile with the house shaded in the background to give you a sense of scale of the two. The house is elevated, so the garage form itself is going to be significantly lower than the mass of the roof of the house. I think as a criterion for the special exception, any design change or whatever on the look and feel of it would be an ARB issue, if I'm not mistaken. But we're definitely amenable to making what makes sense for a positive project here. So.
Oh, no, I was just curious, because from, when I look at this, it looked like, and again, it's hard to visualize it, it looked like the garage placed in front of the house was going to be very, very tall, which, so you more or less see the garage more than you do the house. And then my other thought with that was they were doing some of this to eliminate parking. I'm trying to get to that slide, I'm sorry. And I didn't know if you needed all of that. Oh, here it is. The one where your landscape plan. When you go to that, you're also showing a large turnaround area. Yep, this one. So do we need such a large turnaround area there? Because if it's a 2-car garage, currently they have 3 cars right now in their driveway when I drove by earlier. So 2 of those cars would be in the garage, and there's plenty of room for a 3rd car to park in front of the garage. So do we really need to add a turnaround and go to a higher percentage of land use by diminishing the size of the turnaround? That was my question.
Right, yep, I think as a standard course, people are, I think, required to have a separate parking pad that does not impede on the garage plan itself, that there's supposed to be areas to park so that there's fluidity for the 2 primary parking, for the guest parking. So there's not like, okay, I gotta move the guest car to get my car out of the garage kind of thing.
It just looks like a big pad of parking on top of a garage.
Yes, ma'am, and I think that the part of the nature of this tighter site is that it's going to feel like it's big, but in reality, this is really small compared to most, like that last project you looked at, this paved area is minuscule compared to that last project, for instance. It's just a function of what we're trying, the fact that cars are what cars are, they require X amount of space. So I think that's why we have the 50% rule, so that people are limited, and that if they choose to build a little larger house and less driveway, or a little more driveway and less house, that gives them the restriction, from your standpoint, that they can't go over that 50%. It doesn't matter if they want to have that turnaround or not. So that becomes the
And then my
limit.
last question is, and I'm sorry, because I know I'm being a little bit of a nudge on this. Having built a house, there's always unexpected expenses that come up. And the easiest budget to hit is your landscaping budget. I mean, it's the last thing you put in, so it's where people take the money to cover point A and point B for unexpected projects. Are we assured that with all of this building, that this landscaping is actually all going to happen to buffer the look of this garage on the road and right next to their neighbors?
We can make.
This is
that
Mr.
part
Toole
of
here.
the
I'm sure he'd be.
approval.
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just trying to ask a question because it's a huge structure, and I just want to make sure that,
You're not asking me how much money I have in my bank account, right? You just,
No, I'm not asking, no, sir, I'm not
yeah, I
trying to be
can-
obnoxious. I just know that I've
I
had
can
a lot
afford
of
it.
friends build houses, and what happens is their landscaping budget gets hit.
Yeah.
And you need this
I've
landscaping
already
budget.
priced it out, and I know exactly how much it's all going to cost, and
Okay.
I'm good to go.
Okay,
Great question, though, because I totally get what you're saying. Steve Toole,
okay.
you need something, is that good?
Just your address.
159 Seamarsh Drive.
Okay.
Am I able to make a few
Other
remarks?
questions? Gentlemen?
Oh, yeah, and Mr. Toole would like to say a few things too.
If I
Oh,
can.
sure.
As part of our
Oh,
Please do.
I'm sorry.
So thank you for your service. Appreciate what you guys are doing for our community. And I just want to share that When we bought this house, this thing was falling down. I'll be honest with you. It was on the verge of either tearing it down or rebuilding it. The foundation was strong though, so we decided to build it or to fix it up. We've spent way more than what we paid for it, and it's a great little home. The foundation, the bones are strong. Completely redid the exterior because it was rotten. It was wood. The roof was leaking. We've replaced the roof. Completely new kitchen, actually 2 of them, because we now live here permanently. Completely redone the whole entire inside. And this is the last thing that we were looking to do, and then we'll leave Tommy and everybody else alone, but it's going to be a gem once it's done. Our request certainly is a variance, but I just want to just remind folks that there is a shed there already. So it was all previously approved as a standalone shed being on the property years ago. That shed is old, and I'm not sure how it's still standing, so I'm looking to replace it. But it'll certainly improve our parking situation. When my family comes, our kids come, we get an extra 2 or 3 cars, and it's just difficult. And we will remain under the 50% primary and 55% secondary requirements. The other thing we've got is that we did a little background quick. We shared the plans with our neighbors as I'm looking at the house to the right visually, and then I emailed the plans to my neighbor on the left, and because I think those are both the comments that you got, and was able to share those with them. Unfortunately, we often went to Disney World as a family, and so I didn't get a chance to talk to my neighbors until this morning, and you read some of their concerns. And we talked through it a little bit and talked about some of the water and things like that. I'm not sure I solved all of the concerns, but it was a good conversation, and we'll continue to talk and work through it. I do believe, when I think about the driveway, I think it'll actually be set back further than what the current drive is with the new garage. It'll provide much needed storage, all new landscaping, a French drain that Randy mentioned earlier. I do think it'll raise the property value for us, but that's not the reason why we're doing it. But I think that spills over to the community and to my neighbors as well. And the other, by placing the garage where we avoid really cutting down any other trees. And we've got a real challenge. We've got a second bedroom on the left, and all of our stuff gets drop-offs for like Amazon gets dropped off there. It never gets dropped off at the front door because you really can't see it because of the way the house is structured. And the new garage wouldn't make that any worse or any better. It's going to be the same. And then the last thing I would say is that my landscape architect actually did some projects on Marsh Hawk where there were similar variances and special request exceptions previously approved for those lots that mirror ours. So it's not something that I think is out of the ordinary. I just wanted to share that as well. But thank you again for your service. Thanks for hearing us out, and I hope you give us an approval.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And we're sort of arguing some of our points for the next proposal, but I just really want to make this clear since we're sort of talking about the building in general. So if we could look at the screen for a second. The whole design here is set up so that we can try to get people understanding this is where the front door of the house is. So y'all went there, but the front stoop is here. And so the whole point of this variance is that by being able to pull this wall up to the edge of what's buildable, we're taking this little triangle, it's about 80 square feet right here. And this whole land area up here is, we talked about before, it's 80 feet. When it gets back here, it's a little less, but this is on average like 300 square feet of space that we can't use, different than if we had a square lot. Does that make sense? I mean, so because of this irregular shape, we're just boxed in with less buildable space than we would normally have. So this extra, we're trying to take, 20% of that area that we normally would have had if we had a regular square lot and use it to put this garage here. Just one more, just this whole corner here with this irregularity, you can't put a building here, right? Because it just has the wrong shape. Yeah, it's just a simple function of the fact that this neighborhood is designed so we can save the trees and kind of meander the roads around the community, have that golf course, the right dimensions. And this lot happens to be that little oddball out, you know, so this is why we're really pleading for your help today, if you could help us. So just lastly on this entry, if you could turn one last time up with your crane next, but if we come in here, as somebody comes in, all of a sudden they say, oh, here is the entry. So if we don't have this opportunity to move the garage forward, this garage is way back here in order to get a garage. And all you have is just a small little hole to get through. And you know, one could say it's possible. Yeah, it's possible, but is it a Kiowa living positive for the community as a whole? And I would argue that it is not. You know, it's a kind of condition that we'd really want to try to avoid.
Other questions for the petitioners?
Frank, yeah, just one question, and it may be just my the lack of ability to read site plans. But looking at the proposed site plan, it appears that the proposed garage, you know, is on the proper side of the north, you know, side setback, but that the eave overhang is not. Is that permissible? Or am I just misreading the diagram?
So our ordinance allows up to 2 feet to go over any setback requirement as it pertains to eave. So that would be permissible in this case.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Other questions from the board? Any comments, questions from the public? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. State your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Teresa Abernathy, and I'm at 160. I'm one of the ones that wrote the emails and just our concerns. But we're at 160 Marsh Hawk. We are the neighboring property facing their house to the right. So I want to state that we're not here necessarily in opposition because we get along with our neighbors just fine. We're just strictly, we have some concerns. Can I go back to the slide with the landscape? No, that's okay. Well, our main concern is, first of all, if I read the rules correctly from Kiowa, that the proposed garage is only, it's contingent upon the variance, and we really have more issues with the variance. So one of the board members asked, you know, why didn't we do that first? So I don't know if that's relevant or not, but should I go ahead and address my concerns with the variance since that's what we're here for, or?
Why don't you hold that until we get to the next phase so that we can get all the facts on the table before we discuss that?
Well, our issue's not, we know their situation because we have a weird situation. We have a very weird shaped lot too. So we understand their concerns and we understand why they would want a garage. It's the size and scope of it and the way it's situated between the live oaks. We're really concerned. The water, the runoff, we've had a lot of houses in this area have had serious crawl space issues due to water concerns. So anything that's going to affect the ecosystem obviously is a big concern of ours. We have live oaks that back up to our garage that would be affected by this large structure near us. When we looked at the Charleston County guidelines for building near live oaks, they suggested a minimum of 12 feet from the drip line, let alone the base of the tree. So it's obviously a big concern for the live oaks. And once again, we're not trying to deny them. That's why we put some suggestions in here. Maybe they could look at some modifications. I think that's one of our big concerns. When we get to the variance, the proximity of where the garage is situated, we feel like it also proposes a safety issue for that sharp curve of sea marsh. So that's just something else we were kind of just looking at. And so if you looked at some of our suggestions, we didn't understand maybe why it couldn't be on the left side. We did talk to Steve this morning. Pamela, she's a co-owner of 160. She addressed him to talk about some of these issues. So I don't know if she wanted to speak. We just ask that you look at the proximity of where that current dwelling is going to be situated, and maybe there's some modifications to be made, so. Sorry.
Pamela Nix, 160 Marsh Hawk. I talked to Steve this morning. Actually, I called him over. His dog frequently comes to our house, and I thought now's a good time to discuss this because they hadn't really approached us. His wife did come over and share a landscape drawing, but it had no dimensions or anything. We didn't realize the scale and the height of it until I think it was John. Teresa talked to John about it because our garage backs up to it. So when you can get 3 feet to the property line on the right side, that's close. We're right behind him, and it's a big garage, but his is goes up, and the ceiling's going to go way across. It's 14 feet high, I think you said, correct? I mean, they weren't talking about the dimension a while ago, but he had told us a dimension. I just want to verify that. Is that correct?
John, I asked John.
Do you want to speak to
The height of it.
in terms of the peak of the roof? 14 is probably fair.
But it's kind of a lateral. It's not like ours is like an A-frame that goes up and peaks and comes down, and all. She's correct, and when you pull off, we're on the corner. Our lot actually wraps around. It's partially on Sea Marsh. So when people pull out of that, they're looking that way, and then they go. And that big garage is going to block some of that visibility. You got bikers coming out. They don't stay in the lane they're supposed to. They come around that corner. They go wherever they want to. They're coming up through there. A car just kind of yields because they're looking that way. They're not looking this way. They're going to yield right into it. It's just, I think it's a safety concern. It's to get that close to the street. That's our issue is close proximity to the street. And if he pushes it toward the street like that, we've got live oaks in that area, like she's talking about. When they purchased the house, they took down quite a few trees, when they did that. Now they're wanting to take more trees down. We've taken no trees down. There was one dead behind the garage that had to come down. That's it. I mean, I love trees. So, obviously, it's a big concern of ours, the size of it. We asked that it be scaled back. He's talking about a double garage and a workshop. Preference-wise, we'd rather it be on the left side because if you go through our neighborhood, everybody's attached garage is on the left side, so they don't back up to another one. You're going to have our garage, which is 500 square feet, right behind his garage, 500 square feet, a big block.
And so that's why some of our modifications, or some of the options we proposed was maybe scaling it down to a single-car garage and workshop, or either a 2-car garage, eliminate the workshop. That would cut down, and then perhaps their variance wouldn't even be needed because of how much square footage the workshop is taken up. Or possibly move it to the left side of the property, which that's what we talked to Steve about this morning. He said that wasn't based on the buildable. I forgot how it was worded, but I understand what he's saying there. So like I said, we're not against his garage at all. We understand they won't park on this island. You need covered parking. We're just asking maybe for some modifications to the site to help some of the concerns that we do have. That's, I guess, our request.
Well, one of their concerns is visibility to the front door for UPS packages. When they build this garage, you will not see that front door at all. The UPS is still going to go to the left to deliver to that other front deck. I mean, when we have our garage open, UPS puts it in there. We just grab it from there and take it in. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just saying that putting a garage in front of the house is going to look, you see a house and then you see a garage covering the front part of it. It's not like anything in the neighborhood. I didn't see any windows on the proposal either, so you're talking about building and building, because they don't really have any windows in their front part of their house.
Just to be clear on what the scope of what we do is, we're not in the design business here. We can only approve or disapprove the plan that's put in front of us. But in any case, do either of you want to address any of those comments? Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Well, I guess our biggest concern is getting so close, a big building like that, getting closer to the street, getting closer to our oaks, because we don't want to lose those.
That's more in the variance thing. But we'll address that with the variance. I
Oh,
guess.
sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So again, I think we're on the same page in terms of mission for the community. Every job we try to be involved with, we're really sensitive to the tree situation. You know, how can we make it most pervious, as much pervious possible for terms of the actual space of the land. I guess I'd like to, and perhaps John can help me here, but we're at a, and I don't know if you all can do this at this point, but it seems like we ought to approve the variance or disapprove the variance first. And the reason is because all these issues are things that we're now considering for the special exception. This garage prospectively could be built with the variance regardless of whether this special exception is approved or not. You know, this isn't really the biggest issue involved here. But we want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're giving you the right information so that we're not clouding an issue that, oh, we're all of a sudden talking about the variance, and now we're talking about this ought to be on the other side of the property. I mean, I can address that, but that's really nothing to do with the fact that we're trying to have an outbuilding, which we already have, but just a different outbuilding shape as part of a lot that's less than 15,000 square feet. That's really the issue that we're trying to talk about. So I'm a little bit confused in terms of how to defend my client about this approach, but I'll address her questions since they've come up. In terms of the overall height of the building, I think if we look at this picture one more time here, we can see the main house ridge is significantly higher than the garage house. Again, this is a design feature and an ARB issue. I would think that this would not impact one way or the other the actual determinant of whether we get the special exception or not, or this variance or not. That would be a design feature of the ARB. The question about which, let's see, we get the right page here. Here we go, okay. So the trees. If the original site plan, you can barely see it, but the driveway currently comes right there. It literally, you know, I don't want to give a number on the record, but it's very, very close to the edge of that tree. And so the garage actually moves away from where the driveway was. Does that make sense? So we're adding relief to the root system to the tree. The comment about the drip edge of trees is a great one, and any community that's really trying to save trees, you know, the raw fact is there's no way to keep hardly any trees if we use that 12 feet from the edge of a drip edge from a live oak. All those would have to go to build this community. So with respect to the comment earlier, I think we're trying to actually improve the health of that tree, giving it more relief than it has currently. If we're going to try to build over on this side, we'd literally have to cut down trees that the ARB would not allow us to cut down. There's no way possible for us to build over onto the left side with a garage over there. And then in terms of the just overall scope and feel of how to access the house, we're, oops, sorry here, I'm trying to, by doing how we're working our paving and our landscaping, visually we're able to orient the path of travel of a person as they approach this house to the front door direction. That's the best we're really going to be able to do. And I think in terms of having a garage or not having a garage, obviously the neighbor's concern is that they have a garage, the back of their garage is here. And I guess I would say if somebody did have the right to build here, that's probably the best location in terms of trying to not affect somebody's livability. And legally, that point right there is buildable. So in the sense that we're building to that corner, it's not even a variance really as it affects the north property.
Can I just ask a quick question, because I can't tell it from what you were just discussing. We have a photograph that shows the two cars parked, I guess, sort of where the garage is going to be. And there's a huge oak tree by the garage, by where these two cars are parked.
That's right. There you go. I think
There you
that's
go.
it.
So, like this one over here. So are those trees gonna be affected by building this? I'm trying to figure out.
You know, I think we are kind of straying into the variance
Oh, okay.
as opposed to the special exception.
So this, okay.
I think Mr. Rice kind of made a good point when he opened this up. Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse. I know it's difficult to talk about this without getting into the details that are kind of where the garage goes. But I think currently what we're talking about is, do they get a detached dwelling?
Exactly.
Not where it's going to be.
But if they're looking to do a detached dwelling, how do you not look at how it's going? If you, just for fun, if we were to say we're going to do a detached dwelling, how do you not then look at the cause and the effect of it all at the same time? Like, I could sit here and say, yeah, it'd be nice, he should have a detached dwelling. And then be like, okay, so now we have all these other issues, maybe he shouldn't have a detached dwelling. So how do we?
Well, again, I think the variance, I mean, it's tough. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we should do the variance first.
I was just going to make one comment, just sort of the differences between the special exception and the variance, and maybe that
Thank you.
helps. When you look at, and if you want to follow me, I'm looking at just the approval criteria based on the special exception, based on that ordinance. Under staff findings, that first paragraph says what the BZA can consider. And so when considering applications for special exception, the BZA shall evaluate the impact of the special use on its compatibility with surrounding properties and neighborhoods to ensure the appropriateness of the use at that particular location. It would be my thought pattern that those contextual issues could be part of that, but I would lean.
I mean, it's a close call. We're really straying into where it is going to be.
Yeah.
And I just kind of feel like that's more of a variance
Well, we can have
issue.
you guys
But,
rule on this one, and then.
But, I mean,
Does the board feel that they have enough information to rule on the special exception at this point? Yes,
John,
sir.
I had a question. It's Jay.
Go ahead, Jay.
If I could
Just-
just respond to Ms. O'Leary's question. I just wanted to point out, this is the tree that we were discussing to finish that conversation. That's this tree.
Yes.
And our garage is moving over that way several feet from where that drive is currently, away from the tree.
Jay, go ahead.
John, going back to the base code, you need 15,000 feet to have an ancillary building. And this property's at 8,000 feet. Is that where we're starting?
Yeah, so that's one of the requirements, but be also note that a special exception will be required because of this property, even if it was 15,000 square feet in size, because it backs up to the golf course is also part of that request. And so it being placed in the front of the principal, typically people want the accessory placed at the back, but because they have adjacency to, in this particular case, the golf course is the reason why as well.
Understood, thanks.
Other questions?
and I mean, I don't want to impact this application negatively because you don't feel like your questions are being answered. So I'm just trying to keep in mind that the size and the location of this garage are going to be discussed in the variance.
Okay.
And I understand, though, if you feel the need to bring in those other issues for the special exception, that's okay. I just keep in mind that that's going to be addressed at the variance stage as well. And the reason I'm concerned is that, I mean, you know, you can grant the special exception and deny the variance. And I mean, I don't know that they'd be ecstatic about that, but it would give them an opportunity to try to redesign the garage
Okay,
to comply. But if we deny the special exception, they're kind of just
stuck. They're
stuck.
done.
That's fair.
Correct.
I
That's
understand
fair.
that.
I didn't quite get that, so thank you
Yeah.
for sharing it. Sorry, Joe.
That's okay. No, that's-
Other questions or comments?
Yes, this is Ben Farabee. I just want to clarify, as I understand it, is that we are now deciding whether or not they get a garage, period. This is it.
An attached dwelling. That's right. That's
Detached
all.
dwelling, thank you.
Yes.
Detached dwelling.
That's all this
Period.
is.
Okay, thanks.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, for the record, could I make a comment?
Please,
Mr. Chairman, if I
Well-
could make a quick comment.
Yeah.
Just to, in my language, this is not a dwelling, this is an accessory building, just for the.
I'm sorry,
for the
a
record.
detached
We're not having any,
structure.
nobody's
My-
living here. This is just for the garage.
That was my bad.
And then my
Just a good
understanding is that
clarification, right.
the variance, just because I probably misheard what I heard earlier, but just for the board's sake, the golf course being in the back allows there to be an outbuilding in the front.
right,
So just to make sure that I understood.
okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Robert Patterson, and at 162 Marshall Lane, so just the other side of Pamela. And we just generally, and my wife, Susan, we just generally have the comment as to whether or not there should be a garage here. We are in favor of that. We think in this picture that's on the screen, two pictures on the screen kind of address our point, which I don't know where that fits into the whole code, but this house has always been, and this property has always been something of a, I'll use the term, aesthetic outlier. It's not that attractive in our opinion. We love that the new owner is trying to address that. Part of the aesthetic detriment of this property to our neighborhood is kind of looks like a used car lot. They're just cars parked in the front yard. We don't love that. We love the idea of there being a garage. Hopefully it can be done in a way that addresses our good neighbors' concerns about saving the oak trees that we all value, et cetera. So we're in favor of there being a detached garage as for those reasons. And the screening of that garage, I think you brought up a good point about the landscape plan. I don't know if it's something you can do to condition the approval of the garage that they actually construct the landscape plan.
We can.
That would seem
We'll
to be a
address
way
that
to
in the
address that
variance.
very reasonable concern on your part, Lynn.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, John?
I just wanted to comment just from scratch, just to reassure that question came up based on Mr. Rice's comment about the placement of accessory structure in the front yard. The ordinance does allow that, but that also requires a special exception. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear for the record. That because it backs up to the lagoon, it can be placed in the front yard, but after special exception is granted.
Any other comments, questions?
This is Ben Farabee again, and the question of clarification, is this the time that we question whether or not the garage and a storage shed, or is that into the variance?
I think that's part of the variance discussion, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah,
I think it would be more appropriate there.
okay.
Okay.
That being the case, I'd entertain a motion to approve the special exception, then we'll move on to the variance.
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Ben?
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
What
for the special
recommendation?
exemptions for them to have the house, to have an auxiliary building in the front of the house. That's what the special exemption was for, correct?
Yeah, there's a staff recommendation, which I'll ask if, I think Phil moved this, if we could modify it. Staff recommendation that, an inspection be done to assure that it meets the as-built condition. And secondly, we've talked extensively about the landscaping, and I think also that, would you modify your motion to include that the landscaping plan must be completed?
Agreed. Yes.
Okay. Jay, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion. All right, let me call the roll. Phil?
Yes.
Phil, what was that, Phil?
Yes.
Yes.
Approved.
Lynn?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Okay. The special section is approved unanimously. Now we will move on to the variance, which is case BZA 23-000-007. Again, at 159 C Marsh. And John, the floor is yours.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is subject property 159C Marsh. The particular application request BZA 23-000007. The TMS number 20703, parcel 27. The applicants, Stephen to Kimberly Lavini, and Mr. Rice as the representative. This particular request is for the variance reduction of the 20-foot front yard setback in the approximate amount of 83 square feet. And this is for a detached accessory structure. The front setbacks for this particular lot are 20 feet off of C Marsh Drive. There's a 7-foot side setback on the right side with a wall, 3 feet side setback on the left side, and a 30-foot rear setback against the golf course. The maximum lot coverage is 50% for this subject property. Here is the zoning map outlining the subject property in red. This is part of the R20 overlay zoning district. Parcels across C Marsh Drive are located in the Parks and Recreation zoning district, as well as the parcel to the west at the rear of the subject lot, which is a golf course. Properties to the north and properties to the south are also zoned in the R20 zoning district, overlay zoning district. The applicant's proposed plans include a new detached accessory structure that particular proposed request encroaches into the required front setback. And the proposed plans, within the proposed plans, that amount is 83 square feet. As shown in the previous case, the same property as images. Subject property's rear across C Marsh Drive. Here is the existing site. Existing site shows the parking, surface level parking at the north plan view here. Proposed shows the structure, accessory structure encroaching into the required front setback. The design team has hashed that area, cross-hashed that area, showing the 83 square feet that goes into that front setback. The area of the existing drive, my apologies, is being proposed to be removed, and the driveway now, apron of that driveway is shifted a little bit further south. Applicant has provided a landscape plan that's outlined or provided shown here. Existing trees being preserved. And the applicant has also provided their drawings, which include elevations of the structure. Staff did conduct a site visit pertaining to this particular piece of property, and based on the staff findings, when you look at criteria A for the variance, extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular property, there may be extraordinary and exceptional conditions outlined, and that's due to the irregular shape of the property, the location of the lot, and the existing parking layout. Per the applicant's letter of intent, Lot 159 has a total area of 8,627 square feet, and due to its irregular shape, where the front lot dimension at approximately 80 feet is twice the dimension of the rear lot line, as approximately 40 feet. 1,500 square feet of lot area, or approximately 17%, is forward of the front yard setback. A similar lot with a rectangular shape of 60 feet by 144 versus a 40 by 80 by 144 has a comparable area of 1,200 square feet, or approximately 14% forward of the front yard setback. This disparity in lot cover configuration, in effect, reduces the buildable front yard area by 300 square feet versus a comparable rectangular lot, creating an extraordinary condition. The irregularity of the lot shape affects, secondarily, the usability of areas inside the setback. As the proposed design shows, the building the size of the garage does not fit efficiently into the triangular shaped section of land, leading to the need of the variance. These conditions may be unique to the subject property and may not apply to other properties in the vicinity. This is pertaining to the conditions outlined to other property in the vicinity. Within the applicant's letter of intent, they have stated that the vast majority of lots around the subject property have a street frontage of 60 feet and tend to be rectangular in shape, with this variation primarily on the rear property line. Other exceptional lots occur along Marsh Hawk Sea Marsh intersection, with other examples all being larger lots than 159. This is pertaining to criteria C. The conditions outlined to this particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The application of the ordinance to 159 would prohibit the construction of the proposed attached garage, as the proposed structure does encroach into the required front setback. However, it does not unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The applicant has stated within their materials there has been considerable study for this lot to provide reasonable covered parking, from a carport not approved by the Architectural Review Board to a garage that was so close to the house that the already confusing entry sequence was further minimized. And that includes the owner currently has a problem with deliveries being dropped at the secondary porch. There's no satisfactory architectural solution without the granting of the variance as provided by the applicant's letter of intent. Looking at criteria D, the authorization of the variance may not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent properties or the public good. The encroachment into the front is approximately 8 feet and is approximately 12.6 feet from the property line. Per the applicant's letter of intent, quote, the addition of the garage in the front yard of 159 Sea Marsh would be an enhancement to the adjacent property and to the general public by creating an opportunity for the owner to move vehicles out from view in the front yard into the garage. Garages are common and desired in the zoning district, and as such, the zoning district not be harmed by the granting of this variance. Looking at criteria E, the Board of Zoning Appeals should not grant a variance that would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise. Granting of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district. This particular request would require special exception as noted in criteria E, and the applicant has applied for special exception. That special exception has been granted based on the previous case heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The applicant's letter of intent has stated that the limit of this type of structure in the front yard is for lots 15,000 square feet or more, below the lot size standard. And this consideration requires a special exception, and the applicant has noted that that application was submitted, and there would be ultimately no extending of a non-conforming use of land or to change the zoning. Looking at criteria F, the BZA may not consider profitability as part of this application. The applicant has stated as part of their materials that the request is not a function of profit, but instead motivated to improve the quality of life of the owner and neighborhood through improved car storage. Looking at criteria G, the need for the variance may be the applicant's own actions. However, the applicant has stated a non-conforming lot configuration of 159 was not the owner's action. The need to the need to provide reasonable neighborhood-friendly parking solution on a prominent lot, which also happens to be irregular in shape, is a function of the development plans. Criteria H, the granting of the variance may not be contrary to the public or neighborhood interests, may not adversely affect other property in the vicinity, nor interfere with the harmony, spirit, intent, or purposes of these regulations. Looking at the applicant's letter of intent, they have stated that the garage in the front yard of 159 C Marsh just would not be a detriment and would be an enhancement to the adjacent property and to the general public by creating the opportunity for the owner to move vehicles out from view in the front yard into the garage. And the final criteria I, which speaks to the comprehensive plan in our zoning code, the applicant has stated that the comprehensive plan would allow for this lot accessory building in the front yard, so as long as it backs up to a golf course, which it does, and it is over 15,000 square feet. The second consideration is for a special exception. So that's the approval criteria that's been outlined. Staff did include the same condition as a recommendation should this particular variance be granted, pertaining to the consistency of the proposed plans meeting the coverage requirements, as well as ensuring that the placement of the proposed structure does not impede beyond the setbacks outlined.
Anybody have any questions for John?
Yes, Mr. Ben, when was the when was the property purchased?
Just 1 second.
Mr. Toole, can you answer that question? When was the property purchased?
6/18.
December of 2018?
2018.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
2018.
Thought I had in another set of notes, that's what I was looking for.
Mr. Chairman, while he's looking that up, can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
That we just acknowledge and accept that all the comments and testimony and transcript from the prior hearing on the special exception be acknowledged to be part of this hearing as well? Not to cut anyone off, but since obviously people are going to be, there was a lot of testimony that might impact the variance. And I would just, in case something gets appealed, that the record include the prior motion as well.
That makes sense to me. Do we need to have a motion
is that-
to that effect?
This has been fair, but I think I have an objection to that.
Okay.
I think that we tend to, long term, we'll tend to isolate one from the other, the cases. And I'm afraid that all the information won't be in there. And I don't even know if we were thinking, when we heard it, if we were thinking special exception or variance, and where our logic applies. I'm particularly interested in having reread or the ladies, the neighbors come back and cite their concerns with the project before we move on. But I have concern about I know it's a time element, but I am concerned that we're going to lose something in the history of this if we don't have some of the material repeated.
And I'm not trying to preclude that at all. I
know that.
Okay.
I just want to.
So we will.
And I'm not trying to elongate the process either.
We'll include all of the material in this record from the previous case, but that does not preclude anyone from addressing any comments they wish to make in this proceeding.
And I would encourage them to do so.
Okay.
I do want to just clarify just the question about the ownership was 2018. The original home was built in 1978.
Okay.
2022 is purchased. Is that what you said?
The 2018 is when it was acquired, but the property was developed originally in 1978.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I appreciate not having to come up with a new speech. I only had one speech, so. But I will try to be brief. I think really the letter A in our list of criterion is really key to us. There are extraordinary and special conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. I think it's important.
No, go ahead.
I think it's important for us to fully get our heads around that this is a unique parcel in this whole community. There's not any one piece that has a regular lot size that's this small, 0.2 of an acre, 2/10 of an acre. Other lots that are a regular quarter of an acre, et cetera. And then the ones that are not irregular are larger than the 2/10 of an acre on the mean, is my understanding as well. So as you know, you just sort of think back to 1978, where the architect was trying to figure out how to put a house on this lot, you know. And so as you're trying to get golf course views, you try to slide the house to the back as you can and create some space for that. And then as the, you know, whether it was the best way to do it or not, that's how they did it. And so the entry is then slid sort of in this back area. And we don't have a garage, you know. So as a norm for the community at this point, one would say that a garage would be a healthy thing. I think we've had testimony from the prior hearing that just the fact that there's sometimes 2, sometimes 5 cars on the property uncovered out there is just not good for anybody. So as we start to look at what's in the best interest of the community, having covered parking, I think, would be something everybody could agree that that's really important, that we ought to do that. So how do we do that? Well, we have specific tree locations that are set, and we've looked at the site plan previously. Oops. And Mr. Toole is contracted with Joe Gessner, who's been working on Kiowa Island for 37 years, has done tons of these type projects, and he's come up with this design. And the bottom line for this design was, how can we save all the trees? I mentioned earlier there's 3 palms that that were kind of right in the front. That's new landscaping's been replacing those. But all the live oaks, all are remaining. All the other trees are remaining, and then being enhanced with new landscaping. So that's, I think the intent of the owner is right on line with what hopefully your board's intent would be. How do we beautify this space? How do we improve the landscaping? How do we keep it from looking like a parking lot? And this garage is a minimal effort to do that. And let's talk about that minimal effort. So if you go to a parking space in the mall or something, your space is going to be maybe 10 by 20 if it's a good parking space, 9 by 18 sometimes. The size of our garage, 19.4 wide by 20 feet 8 inches deep. That's the outside dimension. So if you try to put 2 cars in there, we're down at that, basically a 9-foot space, just enough room to have your car, get your door open, get out. So we're trying to go with that idea, what's a minimum acceptable improvement in the need for this variance? So we really feel like we've really tried to address that. Why the accessory area? Well, if we don't have an accessory area, then all the things that people have to have in their garage, there's just no space for them. There's no room to queue up things on the side of this garage next to a car. We've got to have a space to put lawn tools and bikes or whatever. So I think I said enough about that. One last thing about the irregular shape is again, sorry for repeating myself, but this idea that a significant portion of our typical land area in the front of the house is over the setback line is really the issue here. Now we've got 300 square feet of space that would be in a square lot, usually in an area that they could build on, is not available because we have this widening pie as we move away from the center of the house. So that's why we've got to have this 80 feet, 83 feet. I think it's clear that these conditions don't apply to the other in the vicinity. And down to the prohibit or reasonably restrict the utilization of the property. To kind of cut to the chase, the site plan this is where the setback line is on the site plan right here. Starts here, ends here. Okay? The neighbor to the north, so this is buildable space right here. So let's say you approve this variance. That, or don't approve it. Either way, that is something that the owner could build on right at that point. Obviously, we're asking for this because of that irregularity. If this was a square lot, we could just come straight off here and build the garage and stay within the setback. But this does not affect the legal ability for the owner to build next to their northern neighbor.
Lynn?
Can I ask Steve a quick question, please?
Yeah.
Actually, I have a couple. Bear with me. So, sir, when you and Kimberly purchased the lot, did you at that point think one day I want to put a garage here, or did you talk to the realtors about, could I possibly fit a garage in here? What are the ramifications of a garage in here?
I would say that it's been a long process and it's evolved. With the existing shed, our original plans was to replace the shed with a much larger shed. And then as my family would come, I realized that I had a parking dilemma, and I've learned today that my neighbors don't appreciate my parking dilemma either. So, and it's all good, but I appreciate your other input. So after talking with the landscape art, we originally talked to Sarah, Tommy's predecessor, around a garage, and she was saying we could squeeze in a single-car garage, and we didn't know if that made sense or not. Then we hired Joe. But the other thing I would say to you is all along this process, as we're evolving, we prioritized what we needed to get done in this house. And unfortunately, the landscaping and the garage idea kind of fell. I mean, I'm at the end. I had to fix a leaky roof.
Oh, no, I get all of that. No, it was just
It's an honest question.
It's an honest question. You bought a lot that was an awkward size.
Yeah.
And when you bought it, did you think at that point that you might have difficulties doing this? Because a lot of people have odd-shaped lots.
We did. I'll also say that we bought it to rent, and COVID hit. I got a new job.
Mm-hmm.
We found out we love Key Island.
Mm-hmm.
We now this is our forever home, and we want to make it where how we like it and how we like to live, and my neighbors feel good about we're their neighbor.
No, I get
It's
that.
evolved.
Yeah,
It's an
I was
honest
just
answer.
trying to understand
It
what the thought process was, because
it's evolved.
Some people will buy a small lot and they're like, well, we want to build a big house, but you bought a small lot. I mean, you didn't buy a house that was a half an acre or a third of an acre.
Agreed.
You bought a small lot, so you are subject to certain restrictions, more or less. Okay.
Yeah,
So
we are.
Okay.
Mr. Rice, I had a question. Could you put up the landscape picture again?
Here we go.
The comments by the owners of 160 concerning car and bicycle traffic caught my attention. And just looking at this picture here, it looks to me like there's plenty of space between where the garage ends and where the road starts in order to see clearly in both directions. Is that in fact true?
Can I
Sure,
respond to that?
whichever one.
Yeah. I need to go to the one that has the lot with.
Go to the back.
Go back.
Oh, gosh.
I'm going. All right.
That's it, I think.
This is it. So, couple thoughts there. You can see how Sea Marsh it gradually turns to the right. Okay, and so my road it's on a turn. It's not perfectly straight in front of my property. So it's turning to the right. And as you can see, Marsh Hawk actually comes out further into Sea Marsh, way in front of my property. And I would say a couple of things. I don't think I would argue I don't think that's going to be an issue because of the structure of the road. And then the other thing I would say is that my garage, I doubt my garage is much closer to the road than their existing garage. I don't have exact measurements, but when I put a flag out and looked at it, it might be 2 or 3 feet past. But again, the way Sea Marsh turns and the way Marsh Hawk comes out and meets Sea Marsh, it's out further, it's actually out past my drive, the end of my driveway. It's a valid point. The other thing I would say is staff looked at that and they thought they were okay based on what I heard John say earlier.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for the applicants?
Yes, this is Ben Farabee. I have a question with regard to the flooding. The issue was brought up by the residents on 160 Marsh Hawk, but I didn't think there was an answer to potential increased flooding.
Yeah, I think what they mentioned earlier, sir, was a French drain. And so I have gutters on my house. So the landscape plan includes running all of my gutters in the front, including my new gutters on my garage, to a French drain. So the drainage will actually improve rather than get worse.
Improve on your property, or what about the neighbors?
Well, none of my none of the, I mean, all my water coming off of my garage will go to a French drain. So it won't make it any worse. I'm not an expert on where it'll make it better, but the logic tells me it would make it better. But
Where's the French drain sending it? It's collecting it to a French drain, and then is it sending it out to the road, or?
it's buried in the ground.
It's buried in the ground.
That's the way French drains work, yeah.
Oh, so you have the big buckets that you fill with the rocks?
Right.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah, no,
I was thinking of a different drain.
Yep.
Other questions?
I'm not familiar with that area. But it sounds like that there's a historical flooding problem in the area. Is that true?
I'm not aware of one.
Other questions from the board? Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Can I make one more comment real quick?
Yeah, sure.
All right. We talked about the shed earlier. The only thing I would say there is that just the way I grew up, I've learned to work with my hands. So I have all type of saws, all types of, you name it, I got it, drills. I do all that stuff myself. So that's why I was looking for a shed. We wanted to minimize the garage, to minimize the variance request. And then I needed the place to put my tools and get them out of storage. That was the point behind that.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more quick question? If you go back to the landscape plan, I had asked, do you really need that little turnaround area? Have you guys considered maybe doing shells or gravel or something like that to help with water? Or you definitely like the idea of it all being cement? I'm just curious.
I have not considered that. I'll be honest with you, Linda. The primary thing that we were considering was the overall square footage and making sure we stayed below that 50%.
No, I get that, but as everyone was just worried about flooding, it's a softer scape to accept water. So I was just saying, maybe that's something to think about.
Yeah, the only other point I would make is that unfortunately, I'm probably the lowest lot when you look at both of my neighbors. So I
know that feeling.
I'm sorry?
I know that
You
feeling.
know that feeling? So if there's a flooding issue, I tend to get the brunt of that. But that's why, another reason why I'm looking to do the French drain.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
Once again, Teresa Abernathy, we're at 160. I wanted to reiterate once again that we weren't opposed to his structure. It's the whole footprint of it, I guess, that we were really concerned about. Specifically the variance, because of the trees, because of the flooding issues. I would like to address that. On the street, I'm not exactly sure in proximity. They're close to both of the property lines between both Mr. Toole's property and ours. There are two street drains that constantly are flooded. Both our house and their house, we had to have crawl spaces encapsulated due to flooding water issues. I think we both have dehumidifiers in our crawl spaces now. Across the street from us at 161, they recently had to dredge out. It's on the Marsh Riverside, which is literally across the street from us. They had to dredge out behind their property because of flooding on their property. So there is some serious flooding issues that are possible. I mean, things are possible, and it is something that we have had to deal with. Our house is very low also.
I mean, I blow out the drain. Our properties come together and there's a street drain. I blow it because everything goes that direction. I go over there when I'm blowing. And blow
to try
it
to keep
out
the
as much as I
drains
can,
clear,
keep the
yeah.
concrete, keep the drains clear.
What I heard Mr. Rice say, I believe, and Mr. Toole, is that given that all of this property has gutters and the French drain is keeping any runoff on the property, that this will be certainly no worse than it is today and probably better. Am I wrong about that?
When you look at the driveway, you're talking about 20 foot wide. Look how far it goes. That's all hard space. So basically, that driveway is going to create a lot of water. It's got to go somewhere. There's no French drain.
But you've got that driveway there
It's
now.
already there now.
No,
That
it
one's
goes
much
in the
larger,
middle.
that one's much larger
The
than.
driveway now
that.
is like.
And their current driveway does retain water that we've noticed in the
If you look
pictures.
at the picture, there's a water in the current driveway, and that was probably not after a storm.
I guess our concern too is that the trees that are in proximity on that drawing, once again, to accept the variance, it's going to put a strain on those trees. I know that they're saying that they're moving the driveway a little bit further. You can see from that picture in from where they are now. But the driveway doesn't have footings that are going to go into the ground, which are going to affect those live oaks that you see in the picture there. And we have one backed up to it. You can see behind the Jeep. So when you put those footings into the ground, I'm not a tree expert, but I imagine that there's going to be some damages to those root system. And that was obviously another one of our concerns. That's why we asked for maybe a compromise with the structure. Leave the variance as is and maybe look at the size of the structure, you know, for a compromise, and that's why we're perfectly fine with that. They talked about the accessory structure, needing the workshop for tools. We have a two-car garage. All of our stuff is in the garage. We actually have 2 tables at the back of our garage that is room. The previous owner had a workshop in there.
And then we keep all our lawnmower
Yeah.
tools. There's plenty of room in that big of a garage.
So that's why we're requesting maybe a compromise for the size of the structure. If you deny the variance, and look at that, look at the footprint again, where you don't push that structure out. We are very concerned about the hardscape, I guess. That's a big issue. We know it's a patio lot. They can have up to 50%. Per the Rice Architect page, it's in the supplementary materials. It says existing lot coverage right now is at 41%. The proposed lot coverage goes up to 50%. That doesn't include some other structures. There's no patio listed under that, which is in their landscape proposal. There's some things, or that's the main thing. So it's, with the size of that lot, I would really ask that there be an unbiased study to confirm that it's within the hardscape limitations. And I guess our other concern was that they had previous structures denied by the ARB, it's my understanding, that were smaller, and now suddenly much larger with a larger footprint has been approved. And that's kind of concerning to us, why, I guess, the rationale for that. And I guess that's where we kind of stand right now. Once again, we're not trying to deny them. We understand the parking situation.
We get along with these neighbors.
Yeah, there's no animosity here.
Help them on an insurance claim relative to
okay. Yeah, so we don't, there's no personal vendetta or anything like that. We just want to obviously protect the trees. That's a big concern, and and that goes into our property also, so.
I don't know where the patio is that you're talking about, but in any case, that would be part of the lot coverage, would it not?
It's not listed under their proposed lot coverage. It's a letter from Rice Architects. I don't know what page number it is in this pamphlet, but it has the existing lot versus, it looks like this. Wow,
If you
John,
look at that drawing, and if it's to scale, there's no way that they're
Visually,
not
yeah.
50%, over 50% with that drawing, with the driveway, the building, the house. They added on to the house
Yeah, but
after
it's
they
the same
purchased
there,
it.
and it's not there yet, so it can't be the same. This says existing. It hasn't been built yet, so it can't be the same number. The garage. Not a garage, a patio. There's a
We're
patio
talking about that
proposed in the back of
patio.
the
It's
house.
and the
Per the
walkway.
landscape.
The walkway is the same color, and on the backside of the house.
Kim, Steve's wife, pointed that out to
We're talking
us.
about that patio back there, Dad? Are you talking about the patio back here?
Yeah, there's a proposed patio
That's
versus
not
that, so
there.
it's not listed under so that would put it over 50% if you're going by that current landscape.
It's what?
It's in the plan, so.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk about the cars in the driveway. There's no guarantee that they're gonna park. One would have to be in the driveway because they have 3 cars. But his wife mentioned that one side of the garage is gonna be a golf simulator, so that means 2 cars would still be in the driveway. So if that's the case, if their concern was the cars being in the garage, feel like there's no guarantee. You can't guarantee somebody's gonna park in the garage.
And, I mean, I do understand their concerns on that. Everybody wants their car protected. We're in a high rental area too, so we see cars on the street. That, to me, is not a big problem, cars parked in the driveway, because they're all up and down our streets for all the rental properties, so.
But if you're concerned, like as far as if the safety and the issue, I implore people to drive by there and look.
Come around that corner.
Because when they
yeah.
come out around there, people they're looking to the left, they're not looking to the right, and they just pull out. And, you know, we're extra cautious in that area because we live there, and we know that when this rental season, people are everywhere. They're all over. And it's very dense trees there. We kept our trees and ours, and then you have that structure. Right now, you can see through there. Because just the cars are there. Once that structure's there, you're not going to be able to see through there. You're going to see a structure.
Well, this gets to my earlier question. I mean, as I look at this diagram, there's a lot of footage between the edge of the road and where the garage starts. Enough to see in both directions, it seems to me.
If it was no trees, I agree, but there's a whole lot forest there. We have total landscaping on that side, because our lot goes around to Sea Marsh. We've got one of the bigger front yards. We probably have the biggest front yard in that area.
And so that if you, I mean, like I said, the compromise, they got the building, just look at the variance in respect to the trees and the road. It's from that, it looks like it's a lot. But when you're coming around that curve on Sea Marsh, you have to reduce speed. I won't even walk on one side of the road right there because of cars. When I walk my dog, I go the other side because to me, it's not that whole corner is not safe, the way cars drive around it. So the variance, I think, would impact that. Just implore you to consider that, so thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
In that area, again, you know, like she mentioned, both our houses had, you know, like a massive water damage underneath and had to have new joists. Ours had to have a new girder. We had capulated it. We added a dehumidifier, and that's because you do have the water issues that come into that area. It's very low lying, and you got the ponds on one side, you got the river on the other side. You know, we walked by our neighbors who just built a huge thing to block the water. The other day, it wasn't high tide. It was all the way to the top. It wasn't king tide, but it was all the way to the top. I mean, that just gives you an idea. All that spills out into the road.
Further comments by the applicant?
I just to be clear, I did not have water problems under my house. I had rot, but anyone who lives on Kiowa Island realizes, I mean, we live in a rainforest, essentially. You're going to have that. So I did that only to reduce the humidity and the moisture in the air, and it's helped. I didn't have to replace any girders underneath or foundational. I can't speak to theirs, but
They had to replace all the ducts. The plumber discussed it was a mess. All the ducts were flooded, and you had to replace them.
I didn't pay for it. I mean, maybe somebody else did. But we will, whether I have a golf simulator in my garage or not, I mean, that's above I can pull in the way those work. They're on the roof, the ceiling. So the cars will be in the garage, especially after some of the feedback I got from my neighbors today. I'll be respectful of my neighbors. I don't know if there's any other questions you guys might have, but I think that would be my final points.
Mr. Rice, if you have something factual to add, otherwise I think we're going to call the question soon.
Certainly. I think just as you all consider the lot coverage issue, I think that's just separate in my mind from the variance, that the owner is allowed to do up to 50% of coverage on the lot, 55 with the ancillary spaces. Variance or no variance. So their comments well taken. I think the owner is sensitive to that with the French drain approach, and he seems like the first one to be flooded. So it's going to be in his interest to make that happen. One last comment on the size of the garage is that, just to reiterate, we've gone below minimum standard. You know, if you look at some jurisdictional codes, a 20 by 20 space is what you need to have a two-car space counted as parking. So we have less than that. So we are much more restrictive to ourselves, if you will, as we start to look at this comment of not needing a shed or whatever. There's just no room for tools, et cetera, in the space. And I think staff has addressed the safety issue. One could look at a visual of where the roads are coming in and where people are accessing the road, and the angle of approach is such that it's not coming through the garage location as we're showing it in our opinion. Thank you very much. Appreciate your all's patience.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve this variance.
Right, before we do, are the sort of conditions that were pertinent to the previous question pertinent here as well?
I'm sorry, I missed that, Phil.
The as-built, the consistency with the landscape plan and so forth.
Yes, the motion I would entertain includes both the landscaping and the as-built inspection. Someone care to move that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Wait, did he make the motion?
Yes. To
He
approve.
can move the,
I'm looking for a second, Ben.
no, I'm not.
Okay.
Is there a way to request a hardscape survey just to sort of put some of this to bed, some of that? Is that is that considered an amendment?
I don't know if anybody heard that, but Lynn is suggesting that we add a condition that a hardscape survey be done to put some of these issues to bed. Joe, does that work for you?
Tell me what to do.
Was there a second? I didn't hear a
There
second.
was not a second.
I think Ben seconded it, but I'm not sure.
I did not
I
second
did
it.
not second
Okay.
it. There's no second.
We don't have a second then. So unless I hear one,
Yeah, I mean, would you like to,
I guess that's my question is, am I allowed to ask that as an amendment before we vote? Because we don't have a second on that.
you kind of
let me
need the
just say,
second to have
the
any
motion as I
discussion.
proposed
Okay.
failed. If
Okay.
you want to make
There
another
you-
motion, go to it.
Okay.
That is
So
correct.
I
There
would
you
like to
go.
make a motion that we get a hardscape survey done to see where this actually all lands out. And then once that survey is completed, if it can come back to the BZA for a vote for the variance, because we would see the actual, we would be able to put everybody's concerns at rest. If you're right, kudos. It'll show your neighbors and your friends that this is where we are and we can move forward. Is that a compromise? No, we can't do that? Okay.
The request is for a hardscape survey. I just want to have clarity on what would that bring to the request as far as the setback is concerned? Because that would be more so relative to, I just want to know what information that you would need from a hardscape survey.
I think it would just, from what I keep hearing from everybody and in my own little mind here, that part of our concern is the structure, are all of these structures too much of a hardscape for that small lot? So are there more impervious structures than we need?
I would revise maybe the term hardscape survey to, you're asking more so of a analysis of,
I believe I asked for a hardscape survey because that was something that somebody else had proposed in this packet of requests.
The residents of 160 proposed.
I'm saying, I just don't know what a hardscape survey is. A site plan would tell me what elements are hardscape versus not. So that's what I'm saying. For further analysis to make a decision. I just want clarity of what the applicant would need to be, what would they be providing?
That's a great question.
Are we talking about the limits of the percentage of the lot that is covered by building, driveway, and so forth? Is that what you're trying to get at with hardscape?
I think that's what we're trying to get out of hardscape as far as like true lot coverage as to with respect to all of this.
So a revised site plan that shows what of all improved areas.
Yes.
That detail, a more detailed
lot survey or lot coverage of what it details, because I'd hate to see a motion fail when they have a beautiful plan, and they do have a plan, but yet, let's find a way, I guess, to see if we can get a little more information and then be able.
So I just want to make sure, so if I hear that right, the motion is to have the applicants provide a more detailed site plan that includes the lot coverage specifics.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second for that motion?
Mr. Lear, if we could make an offer, perhaps?
Okay, we're allowed to.
Well,
No, I think
just
we have an
hold
offer
on
on
a
the
second.
table.
We need to get a second to discuss.
Is there a second for Lynn's motion? I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay. If
I'm sorry.
y'all are okay, Chairman?
Question, okay, so the first motion failed. Have you already decided that?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we're open for comments on the
Well-
moved and seconded motion.
Well,
Is that going to satisfy the neighbors?
I guess the owner's open to, if we're so close on pervious surface or impervious surface, the owner's open to taking that turn area and doing a pervious, shell mix in that second parking space. And we've spent thousands of dollars on surveys and everything else and architects, and if that's what it's going to take to kind of get something where we're not worried about whether we're increasing, we're only talking about 300 square feet more of drive than we had before. So that would take that 300 feet, very close to that, and turn it back to grass, if you will, or to gravel.
can they resubmit a variance that's different from the one today?
So yes, but recall this is for an exception to the front setback. So if that if the building is not being relocated, that does not change the questions that are being asked about coverage. That's why I mentioned this is the request today. It's all interrelated, I think, in hearing your questions, but remember that a new application, if submitted, if it does not address the front setback concern, then that is what's before you today. I just want to make sure that's clear that the questions about coverage, I hear the sentiments, and I think being amenable to the public comments that have been received. I just want to be in bounds as far as for the record of what you're approving.
So for the record, what you're trying to get us to approve is that the positioning of the two-car garage and workshop, correct?
So what you are requesting to approve today is for this garage to be placed beyond that front setback. So the area in hatched, that is what you are approving.
But how do we just approve that without addressing everything else?
You can add condition. You can add. You can add.
As I understand it, you guys have determined that that this plan is under the 50% and the 55% secondary lot coverages. Is that correct?
So there's a 50% maximum lot coverage. The 55% is, I think, is the Architectural Review Board standard, if I'm not mistaken. That's the 55% is the 50% is what is allowed by code within our zoning, by the town's zoning code.
Staff has determined that this plan meets
Yes.
that 50%.
Yes.
Then And I'm
Hey,
not sure what else there is to say.
There's not much else to say.
In light of the comments that are being heard, if there is a condition to be placed, I would probably lean on Joe a little bit for this, but I mean, if there's a condition to be placed, it's to what Mr. Rice has shared regarding some of the coverage concerns that have been mentioned by the adjacent property owners, but that does not detract from what the actual approval request is today. Because you're considering at least some of the negative impacts based on criteria.
I think that's correct. I think my problem is we're unable to get a second on the original proposal. You know,
Correct.
but you're right, John. And variance is not, if they exceeded the lot coverage, there are other ways to deal with that, right? Especially without any sort of approval. Right now, staff has determined that the lot coverage is not an issue. And we're just here.
The only issue is the front setback.
The front setback and encroaching on the front setback in the way that it's depicted in the application.
The cross has to agree.
Yes.
Then why did we talk
In
about
light of the
this?
comments that have been made.
I just want to be clear of all your options, and I mean, the decision is yours as the BZA. If you don't feel comfortable making a decision, you can table to acquire any additional information that you may need to feel comfortable. So I'm not saying that you have to go approve or deny, but there are options of approve with conditions, or deny. And I'll just say the fourth would be if you feel that you don't have all the information in front of you to make a decision today, you can make a motion to defer and receive that additional information that you would need. You would just need to make sure that there's a time attached to that so that that application can come back before you for a decision.
And some specificity as to what the information.
I didn't hear
That's what I'm struggling with.
What was that?
What's the specificity of the information that we don't at this point have?
I think for me, I was taking into account what everybody was concerned about. But
Yeah.
if it's just that little bit. Got caught up in the minutia. Okay.
Well, let me, if I may, Frank, just I want to be sure and that I understand what John is saying. Is there anything about the proposal other than the incursion into that front setback that requires action of the board?
The answer to that, I think, is no.
No.
And John is shaking his head that that's the case.
Right.
So are we allowed to put something new on the floor?
Do you want to make?
Okay, so I'd like to make.
And what objections have we heard specifically to the incursion into the front setback?
That's right. Was that a motion, Phil?
No, that was a question.
Okay.
Okay, so then I
I
would.
could turn it into one, but I just want to be clear that I understand what it is we're being asked to approve and whether or not we're being asked to carry unnecessary water on the back of that one issue.
Yeah, agreed.
So I'd like to make a motion. Is that okay, Joe?
Yes?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variance for the garage, and we ask that they meet the requirements of all landscaping plans that they have out
And the as-built inspection.
in the as-built inspection.
Is there anything else? Or is that it?
I think I better stop there.
Okay. All right, that's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, I'll call the roll. Phil?
Yes.
Lynn?
Yep.
Ben?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
And Frank, yes. Motion passes 4-1. And I just encourage the applicants to continue to dialogue with their neighbors and make sure you've got understanding about what's going to happen here.
I'm sorry for so many questions.
Any further discussion, John?
No discussion. I just wanted to highlight, we will have a July meeting, so that date has been sent to you already. So we will have a July meeting.
Okay.
Awesome.
Good. Any other business? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.